I just knew that my first video back was going to be on the Mariners re-signing the ever so popular Jorge Polanco. According to multiple outlets, the Seattle Mariners have re-signed Polanco to a 1-year, $7.5 million deal. It's either 7.5 or 7.75. That part doesn't matter. With incentives, it can get up to like 11.5 million. There's a vesting / player option based on plate appearances. I haven't seen that number. I'm not sure that really matters either. If he plays really, really well, he's not coming back. If he plays really poorly, he's not going to get enough plate appearances to get to that number. If he plays just right, that Goldilocks and the Three Bears situation, then maybe he's back in 2026. Or maybe he plays so well, we'll get there. Before I get into all of this, I want to issue an apology on how few videos there have been lately. And by how few, I mean none. I think the last video I did was on Donovan Solano signing. And yeah, and it's partially due to the fact that work has been really busy. I work for NBC Sports, for those of you who don't know, and I've been, doing a lot of news shifts for them, but also writing a bunch of prospect lists, doing a bunch of articles for what used to be our draft magazine, but is now just online stuff. That's just the way it is. And unfortunately, that takes precedent. But the main reason for the lack of videos, to be honest, is I have been in just a tremendous amount of pain. I talked about my migraines earlier, like in November, something like that. They've been going on for a long time, but they had gotten to the point where it literally just hurts to stare at this little camera here. And by camera, well, it's a camera, but it's a laptop. I don't have anything fancy. I have something fancy. I haven't figured out how to set it up. Someday, maybe. Anyway, it's been bad. And I have done a bunch of stuff with doctors lately. That's a weird way to put it. I've been to the doctors lately. They have me on a new medication. I'm hoping it's really going to work. So far, okay. You got to give these things time. But that's the main thing. And I just want to apologize for the lack of videos. Who I'm really apologizing to right now is my Hawaii enthusiasts. Those people who pay that $5 a month. It means a lot. And it's the only reason this channel can keep going. So thank you very much. I can't guarantee that I'm going to be posting on the regular. Anytime there's something big happening, I'm going to suck it up and do it. But it's hard to get back to a normal routine right now because it really hurts. It really, really hurts. I feel kind of like I have a concussion, but obviously I don't. But that's similar symptoms. So thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you. Let's talk about Jorge Polanco, who, look, the Mariners make the big trade for last year. They give up a bunch of prospects in Justin Topa. Their hope is that he finally is their long-term answer at second base. And oops, he is 213, 296, 355. That's a 651 OPS. It's an OPS plus of 93. That's so crazy to me that 653 is that close to 100. 100 is average, by the way. He hit 16 homers. He drives in 45 runs. He steals 4 bases, and he plays in 118 games. So the big news here, other than the fact that they're bringing back Polanco, is they're not bringing Polanco back to play second base, according to multiple outlets. The Mariners are going to have Jorge Polanco play third base in 2025. And I think that changes how I feel about it quite a bit. Because Jorge Polanco back at second base is not something that interests me very much. In part because I think not in part, almost in whole, he's just not a good defensive player. And having that up the middle with J.P. Crawford, who loses range, unfortunately, and there was, and now there isn't a whole heck of a lot of. He's just not a great player to his left and right. He charges the baseball really well, but that range up the middle isn't great. And having Polanco and Crawford as your double play combination is not ideal. It's just not. Polanco at third, I think can work out well defensively. There's less, it's not about his instincts, it's not about whether or not he has the reflexes to make plays. And, that's very important at third base. The ball gets there very quickly. Not that the ball doesn't get quick to second base too, but third base is a whole different animal. It's not a question of that. It's a question of range. It's a question about making plays to his left and right. And you're asking a lot less of a third baseman than you are of a second baseman. So, from that point of view, I like it. There are question marks here. Number one, I think the biggest question mark is, you know what? As I said that, like five different, well, actually, maybe this should be the question. Well, maybe this should be the biggest question. So let's just answer them. Number one, how bad was Jorge Polanco in 2024? And the answer was bad. You take a look at the Savant page, his expected batting average was in the 16th percentile. His average exit velocity was in the 32nd percentile. Hard hit percentage, 34th. Struck out a lot. He was in the 10th percentile in strikeouts, and that's awful. That's just not very, very good. And strikeouts were such an issue for the Seattle Mariners, and Polanco was a big culprit of it. A big culprit of it. His swing and miss, he whiffed 30 in the 30th percentile. There's not a lot here to like. But that's not to say that there isn't some things to like. So if you take a look at the positive side of it, his approach was still really good. He swung in at pitches outside of the zone just 24% of the time. That's in the 78th percentile. And he walked 9.8% of the time in the 70th percentile. I think those numbers that I told you make it pretty obvious what Polanco's biggest issue was. Now, look, he swung and missed too much. There's no question about that. But he put himself in too many two-strike counts because he was too patient at the plate. And patient is probably the wrong word. He was too passive at the plate. Too many times I think he went up there looking for the walk. And Jorge Polanco is not a guy who has been like, a hacker in his career. But let's look in 2023 when he was much better. Sure, he walked in 76% of the walked in. Can you tell it's been a while? Walked in 10.5% of his plate appearances. That's higher. But his chase rate is down. His whiff rate is down. He was much more assertive a player. I think he was far too concerned with drawing walks last year. And unfortunately, the swing and miss just wasn't there. And let's go over some other numbers from 2023 because this is what you're hoping for. He barreled the baseball 13.8% of the time. That is an elite number. He landed on the sweet spot 39.6% of the time. That's in the 94th percentile. That's an elite number. His expected slugging percentage was .481. That's pretty darn close to an elite number. Jorge Polanco has had success. And the positive thing that you can take from this is it's just one bad year. It's 1 year, and it was an awful year. It was awful. But it's just one bad year. And it's reasonable to expect him to be at least somewhat between 2023 and 2024. And if he's between those, I don't feel too bad about it. Now, here's the other question mark. A lot of people I saw on those social media websites were pointing out, well, keep in mind, he wasn't healthy. Well, here's the problem with Jorge Polanco. He's not healthy a lot. He has played, well, I wish I had that number right in front of me, but I don't. Played 118 games last year, obviously. Missed about a quarter of the season. Played 80 games in 2023. Played 104 games in 2022. 2020, he played 55 games. That's out of 60. It doesn't count. 2018, he played 77 games. Now, there's some years in between where 153 games, 152, and then 55 out of 60 where it's acceptable. But Jorge Polanco is constantly injured. And I don't think that's hyperbole. Or at the very least, he's hurt an awful lot. So you can't really count on him. The whole, well, if he stays healthy, he'll be better thing. Okay. Show me when the last time he stayed healthy. It's 2021. That's 4 seasons ago. Well, 3 seasons ago and then the upcoming one. But you know what I mean. Can you rely on Jorge Polanco to stay healthy? Absolutely not. Now, maybe he'll be able to stay healthier playing third base because you're asking less of his hamstrings, you're asking less of his ankles to make as much movement. So maybe less movement is going to help him stay healthy. That's more of a hypothesis than an actual answer, though. We need to see it before we can actually say, oh, he's going to stay healthy. The other question mark here is, what can he make of something work in this park? And by the way, Go check out Mike Petriello's article on hitting at T-Mobile Park. I'll link it in the description. And if I forget, somebody please let me know. It's terrific about just what makes hitting at T-Mobile Park so hard. But let's take a look at those splits that Jorge Polanco had in 2024. So Jorge Polanco had a pretty even split of home and away. He had 229 plate appearances at home, 240 away. He was much better away, but he wasn't great. He hit 233, 308, 386, 9 homers, 24 walks, and 64 strikeouts. At home, he hit 193, 284, 322, 7 homers, 22 walks, and 73 strikeouts. That's an OPS of 606 at home. Now, you take a look at what Jorge Polanco has done over his career, and you watch Jorge Polanco play, and you kind of feel like maybe this just isn't the place for him. And I don't think that's an insult to him. I think that's true of a lot of hitters. T-Mobile Park is an intimidating place, and it's like Petriello mentioned in his article, it's not just about the batter's eye. There's a lot of stuff going on that makes it such a tough place to hit. So I have my doubts that Jorge Polanco can ever reach the levels that he did in Minnesota. And I guess they don't have to. A lot of people look at 7.5 or 775, whatever it was, and say, boy, that's a lot of money. No, it's not. No, it's not comparatively. Now, you compare that to what you and I are probably making. If there's a millionaire watching this thing, hey, how's it going? Would you like to sponsor Mile Y? But it's not a lot compared to a major league player. He's getting the same contract or a little bit less. Depends on if it's 7.5 or 7.775 million. Should have it in front of me. Don't. He's getting about the same thing that Tommy Canley just got to play for the Detroit Tigers, a pitcher who throws one pitch and is a good pitcher, but a high leverage reliever. A regular is getting about the same amount as a high leverage reliever. It's not a lot of money. It has the potential to be a decent amount. It's worth pointing out that they declined. I believe it was a 10 million option. It was either 10 or 12. Again, don't know. Doesn't matter. But they declined that option. And so they're bringing him back for cheaper. It has a chance to be more if he plays really, really well. And here's hoping he does, right? But it's not a huge salary. It's not a huge risk. That doesn't make it a great signing. But let's not pretend that, oh my gosh, 7.5 or 7.75 is like the difference here. Now, as some of you pointed out to me on Blue Sky, well, it means a little more because of how tight the Mariners' pockets are. But we're so late in the year now, and there are so few other free agents. Alex Bregman was never happening, right? There are so few realistic options that you can't really be too mad about them spending the reported $15 million that they had. So now with this signing and Donovan Solano, I think they've spent like 12, which, leaves 3. I don't know if they're going to spend that or not. But this is not it wouldn't be a big financial deal regardless, especially in 2025. No, this is not a bad contract. Is it a great fit for the Mariners, though? I don't know. I kind of lean no. And here's where you have a right to complain. Like, I think complaining about Jorge Polanco getting the money he does, pretty silly. I think complaining about signing Donovan Solano, one person apparently called me literally called me a bootlicker because I had the audacity to say that Donovan Solano can help the Mariners. What a silly thing. I hope that person's having a terrific night. I thought that was silly. Complaining that your offseason additions are Jorge Polanco coming back and Donovan Solano, totally different thing. This offseason's a disaster. It's an absolute disaster. And they are going to have to make the trade of all trades for that to change. And they can do that. My good buddy Keith Law ranked them as the best farm system in baseball. A bunch of people I've talked to have them in the top 3. I personally think they have the best farm system in baseball as well. So they have everything they need, except for the ownership group, to let it happen. This offseason is a disaster unless that happens. And, I try to be really optimistic about stuff, especially lately. It's really hard to be optimistic about this offseason. This is a disaster. A disaster. And it's frustrating too because I look at this roster, and I talked about this on a Molly Watt Monday not too long ago, that it's not like they had to do a bunch. I feel really good about a lot of this lineup. I feel pretty solid about left field. I feel great about center field. I feel pretty solid about right field. I feel okay about shortstop. Not great, but okay. I feel pretty good about first base, and I feel great about catcher. And oh, by the way, the best rotation in baseball. And a pretty good, talented bullpen that it's easy to, if things go wrong, make some moves to make better. It's not like they had to do a ton, but they've done almost said a bad word, so little that you can't call this offseason anything but a disaster. And if you want to say, hey, no, Chris, their big addition for the offseason was Randy Arozarena, shut up. Shut up. That's not how that works. And that is the most frustrating thing to me, is that people feel like that they have such Stockholm syndrome from this ownership group and from this front office that it's okay. No, this is not okay. And I hate to do this in Jorge Polanco's thing, because I'm sure Jorge Polanco is a great guy, and I don't think it was ever a question of effort for him last year. I just wonder if he can make this work in this park. And the idea that he is your big addition, he should be auditioning. I was shocked by how many teams were interested in Polanco, by the way. I talked to a bunch of folks that said that he picked the Mariners over the Astros and a couple other teams that had real significant interest. Okay. And he would have fit better in Houston, and he would have fit better in New York, which was another team that apparently has strong interest. But I'm guessing he got more money and a better guarantee of playing time here. So he's here. And I hope it works. I have my doubts. Curious what you guys think. Please hit like. Please hit subscribe. And again, so appreciate your patience. So appreciate your support. Hopefully back with a lot more in February. There'll definitely be more in February. Can't do much less than I did in January. But I just really appreciate the support. Jorge Polanco, welcome back, buddy.